One of the main concerns that I'm hearing from property managers is that they just don't have the resources.
This little device kills thousands of people a year in the United States.
The facility collects an average of 200 whole blood donations. Most of the people who are seeking affordable housing and can't afford it are actively working. Austin ISD is the first school district in Texas to go completely electric. I've been calling these groups and these clinics all day, and many of them were so swamped I couldn't even get a hold of them. The Texas Department of Public Safety's website shows that the wait time for this Austin South location is about 30 minutes. So do you think the way Austin Energy responded to this storm was adequate?
It's not for me to say.
They're basically having to replace the entire gas line for this whole property. Honeybee populations have been declining in the United States since the 1940s.
All this comes as eviction filings are on the rise in most of the state's major cities. And along with rent relief funds running out, a new law is adding even more stress to the situation. Our Jamil Donith breaks it down and explains why activists say it's making it harder for tenants.
I did circle your court date for you.
Okay.
Shanna Alexander is being served with an eviction suit.
Lovely.
Okay.
Thank you, and I'm sorry.
Less than a month after signing a lease to an apartment in Sulphur Springs.
Yeah, that's going to be eviction citation.
And this isn't the first time.
From the 19th of October to now, that's 2 evictions.
Alexander has 2 daughters with special needs. She gets child tax credits, but not enough to pay for rent and support her family.
So buckled up, both of you.
Her parents died recently. Without childcare, she can't work.
I've never had so many problems.
At one point, Alexander lived out of the same car she's driving her 2 daughters to school in.
Can I have a kiss, baby?
A day before her eviction hearing, Alexander qualified for rent relief. She says her landlord refused it.
I had nowhere to go, so I did, draw it out as long as I could because I was panicking.
When Alexander stayed past her eviction date, a judge granted the landlord a writ of possession, allowing them to forcefully remove her property from the rental. She says some of her treasured possessions were treated like trash.
They take control over it, and they have no respect.
A new law now eliminates the landlord's liability for any damages caused during a writ of possession.
Eviction is a very traumatic process.
Texas Tenants Union Executive Director Sandy Rollins says this law will make the process even worse.
I think it lets landlords off the hook, and so they have no reason to take any particular care when they're setting out property.
The nonprofit was one of many advocacy groups that fought against the bill. When it passed, it was a huge disappointment.
We need greater protection for tenants in the state of Texas so that tenant-landlord law is more fair.
Alexander's eviction suit is set for November 22nd, her daughter's birthday.
It's really hard.
So before she even had a chance to move in, now she could be thrown out again.
I can't let it break me down because if I think about it, then I will get down. I don't want to lose that fight. I don't want to lose that hope, and I don't want to lose that spirit that I need to, give my girl somebody to look up to.
And our Jamil Donith joins us now to talk more about how renters are dealing with the new law. Jamil, what an interesting story. Well, so what's the latest for her? What are her landlords saying?
Well, so I spoke to her first landlord, and she said that she did in fact deny the rent relief based on the fact she didn't want to open up her own direct deposit to take the money. So she said that she was waiting to receive it directly and said she never got it. But of course, we do have text messages saying that she was trying to get it to her, but there was just this miscommunication. I haven't been able to reach out to the current landlord, but I am waiting to hear a response. So that's the latest on her situation, and we'll see what happens. She's still frantically trying to look for other assistance because, as you know, most rental relief funds are running out, and in her counties, they don't exist.
She's got 2 young daughters, and it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately not uncommon for a lot of people. And Jamil, if you can walk us through the writ of possession process and just how that works.
Right. So the writ of possession is essentially the end of the line, right?
Okay.
It's not an eviction per se. You're evicted by a judge. So she was evicted by a judge, And then the writ of possession is when someone doesn't leave on their eviction date. Then they go and get this writ of possession from a judge, and a constable will give them a 24-hour notice in which they will come and show up. And in this case, a lot of what tenant rights advocates are saying are the reason why people are staying in their homes past the eviction date because they literally have nowhere to go.
Right.
And so she said, you know, she was buying her time as much as she could because she had 2 kids. She had nowhere to go. She ended up living in her car. She ended up staying in hotels. So that's kind of what leads to this. But a lot of tenant rights advocates have told me that this process, when it does happen, it's really stressful. And oftentimes, she says, landlords can be pretty aggressive. And that's why they think that this law is only going to make it worse. Because they think that now they're going to say, oh, we're not liable. Let's just throw all this stuff out. Her landlord did also say she denied that she did anything with Shanna's possessions. But again, Shanna says she has a constable and a witness who say otherwise. So it's just a really tumultuous experience.
And it's got to be so frustrating for the tenants, and knowing on the flip side that the landlord had the option to accept rental assistance money and didn't. It's just, you know, it seems like something that shouldn't be allowed,
a common
but the
issue
loophole,
as well.
right? That's just
whole other story.
So many
Next one,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll save that for next time. Jamil, thank you so much for bringing us that story.
Suzanne Sanders and her husband Peter are packing to leave their Austin home, and it's all to protect their 11-year-old daughter.
Okay.
That's because Z, as we'll call her, is transgender.
I was born as a male, but my mind was female, so like I'm not really a male, I just look like it on the outside.
We shot this video back in July. They asked us not to show it until they had fully settled into their new home in Oregon.
We really were like, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here soon.
After the Republican Party started focusing on transgender health care, the family says that they didn't feel safe in Texas anymore.
We really feel like we're fleeing for our lives. Because people have such violent reactions to this thing that my child can't help but be.
When the state started investigating gender-affirming care as child abuse, they knew it was only going to get worse.
It's sad to say goodbye to friends, but it's also sad that like the overall feeling we're getting is like, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Equality Texas CEO Ricardo Martinez says Z's family is not the only one fleeing the state in fear.
Kids, families should not have to leave Texas to feel safe. Texas should be safe for everyone.
Equality Texas's bill tracker shows currently there are 12 bills in the legislature this session seeking to regulate or criminalize gender-affirming care. Spectrum News reached out to all the sponsors of the 12 bills. Senator Bob Hall says children who are experiencing gender dysphoria need compassionate help as their body matures, not irreversible surgeries that they will later regret. Representative Brian Slatton wrote, "This child gender modification is child abuse, plain and simple." While the bill sponsors say they believe they're protecting those under 18 from life-altering decisions, the American Pediatrics Association says gender-affirming care is medically necessary health care administered by professionals.
The government should not stand between a family and their doctor.
We caught up with Z and Sanders after the 2023 legislative session started.
I'm just so thankful that I'm not there.
She really hopes people will see how much this is hurting families who just want their kids to be happy.
If you don't accept me for who I am, then that's your loss, because I'm amazing.
Well, May is Texas's rainiest month, and while we're going through a drought right now, climatologists say that can actually make flooding worse. According to the Texas Department of Insurance, only 14% of homeowners have flood insurance. Our Jamil Donith shows us how this is affecting communities.
On Francis Acuna Street, when it rains, it pours.
It feels like God just threw a bucket of water on us.
Catastrophic flooding like this happens every few years here. That's above average, and it's becoming even more frequent.
Still, you can see the line where the water was.
Acuna lives on Brassywood Drive in the Dove Springs community of South Austin.
They got flooded.
The neighborhood is more prone to localized flooding from aging infrastructure, lack of drainage, and surrounding development.
The water has nowhere to run but to the neighborhood.
You can still see the damage the flooding did to Acuna's house.
It broke like all this.
She can't afford flood insurance and doesn't have the money to fix it.
You know, we work check by check. You know, we don't have that extra money.
Because this is localized flooding and it's not in a high-risk flood zone, Acuna doesn't qualify for federal disaster funding or flood insurance assistance.
We didn't know how much damage it had caused.
The city of Austin is working on a flood risk reduction project in Brassywood. In 2020, the city began a 5-year effort to update floodplain models and maps. City of Austin floodplain administrator Kevin Shunk says there are more than 7,000 properties in Austin that are at risk of flooding.
We do have local flooding that occurs because the infrastructure does not have the capacity to convey floodwaters.
But this is also a statewide issue. Texas Water Development Board Flood Science and Community Assistance Director Saul Nucitelli says Texas has one of the highest flood fatalities in the country.
Flooding doesn't respect political boundaries, right? Water's going to go where it needs to go.
Right now, TWBD is remapping Texas's flood risk areas to include communities like Acuna's that experience localized flooding.
So we're going to cover the whole state, map every place, even rural places like parks and whatever. We're going to show the flood risk everywhere.
Acuna is actively working with several agencies to help communities like her.
They're still doing the same thing.
Who she says for too long have been fighting to stay afloat.
And they just kept doing that.
Thanks, Jamil.